Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, February the 20th, 2026. By necessity, I have to make these videos the day before. So although in this video I'm looking at the astrology for Friday, February the 20th, I am actually making this video on Thursday, February the 19th. And the big news is Andrew has got arrested, King Charles III's brother. He used to be Prince Andrew. He's now Andrew, Mountbatten Windsor. And, he has apparently been arrested for misconduct in public office. And we have to talk about this. Also, Thursday, February the 19th is Andrew's birthday. So, happy birthday, Andrew. And so that's going to be a big theme of this video. Also on Friday, today, when is yesterday, when is today, but on Friday, February the 20th, we have a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune, and that is certainly something I need to talk about. So there is a lot to discuss, but first of all, I want to consider the astrology and I Ching for today, which is Friday, February the 20th, and here is the chart for today. So the moon is still in Aries. You can see that it's at, where is it? It's at 12 degrees Aries. So, wherever you are, that's where the moon is. And the moon is kind of moving from sort of one aspect to another. It's moving from the sextile to Pluto to the square of Jupiter. And it's also moving away from a conjunction of Saturn. So, that moon conjunct Saturn, which really was an aspect we had yesterday, moon conjunct Saturn, moon conjunct Neptune, we had that yesterday. But I think it's still an important aspect, particularly as Saturn and Neptune are making a conjunction today. Now, thinking about this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, these are two, generational planets, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to feel it like right now, like on the dot. But it perhaps describes sort of a wider period of time, and it is about uncertainty. The old order is perhaps being broken down. So the old order might be Saturn, and Neptune is the waters of chaos, sapping at the foundations of things. And already we've seen Andrew getting arrested. This is going to be a big blow, I think, for the British royal family, and some are saying this is the end of the monarchy, or at the very least it could be the end of Charles III. Okay, he's not implicated, obviously, but his brother's been arrested, and so it might be time to if you don't abolish the monarchy, at least allow the sort of younger generation to take over. So that's what's happening today. In terms of exact aspects, in fact, it's quite quiet. I know that there almost certainly is stuff going on today, Friday, because we already know that Andrew got arrested on Thursday. So the shocks of that are going to sort of continue to manifest. Okay, that's a rather British-centric view of the world, but we are living in active, dramatic, and perhaps traumatic times. Now, one midpoint aspect that is maybe worth mentioning is the fact that the sun is at 2 degrees Pisces, and not so long ago the sun was making a conjunction to Pluto. That was a few weeks back, nearly a month ago. And in about a month's time, the sun will be making a conjunction to Saturn and Neptune. And so what's happening now is that the sun is sort of halfway between the two. So the sun is on the Saturn-Pluto and the Neptune-Pluto midpoints. So the sun is really triggering those three outer planets, in quite a major way. And so, as far as today is concerned, you can feel the collective wheels in motion, and it may not feel entirely comfortable, but you shouldn't make it too personal. There are collective processes going on, and it is undermining maybe all of us. But again, we shouldn't take it personally. That's just the world in which we are living. Now, going back to those lunar aspects, that moon square Jupiter is an aspect. Obviously, it happens quite often, but perhaps the key thing with Moon in Aries square Jupiter in Cancer is not to exaggerate, not to overreact to what is going on. There are some things going on which we can't do anything about, which are about society, and perhaps we just need to just observe rather than feel that we always have to respond. So that's the picture in. If we set the chart for New York, if we set the chart for Sydney, Australia being a representative of Australasia and East Asia, the moon is earlier in the sign. It's about 3 degrees for Aries at noon. So the moon conjunct Saturn, moon conjunct Neptune, if you are in Australia or New Zealand, is perhaps going to be stronger than if you're in the Americas. And we know we've got a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So really, we've got, if you're in Australasia, you might be feeling that Saturn-Neptune conjunction more than if you're in the Americas. It's like what I said. It is about that uncertainty. I mean, Moon in Aries certainly wants to take action, but on what basis do you take that action? You could take action on the basis of an incomplete picture, but I don't know how much difference there really is between Australia and the Americas. I mean, the moon is in Aries, all day long. Okay, really early in the morning, particularly in New Zealand. I mean, really early in the morning, the moon will be in Pisces. But that would be kind of like the middle of the night. I think you can regard the moon as being in Aries all day long. And then there is the heliocentric picture, putting the sun at the center of the solar system. So here's the chart. So there's the Earth is still making a square to Uranus. I mean, it's moving away from that square to Uranus. I mean, it's a couple of degrees off, or 1 or 2 degrees off. It still stirs things up and reminds us that things aren't entirely stable. And additionally, the Earth is making a square, a quincunx to Neptune, making a quincunx to Saturn. It's kind of making a quincunx to the Saturn-Neptune midpoint. I mean, I don't really look too hard at quincunxes to midpoints, but as we can see it's quite clear to see. It kind of reinforces what I've already said about Saturn and Neptune. There's just something about them which just could be undermining, and we just don't quite know what to do, how to respond, and so that might be a theme of today. And Mercury is heliocentric. Mercury is in Gemini. It's making a sextile to Chiron, and so with that sextile to Chiron, that may be about what we feel we have to say. I mean, I say have to say, what we are obliged to say, because something might not be right, or we may feel that we have to assert our individuality. Chiron is a planet about individuality. It's not just the wounded healer. And if we feel that something is wrong, that we have a different view, then maybe with Mercury sextile Chiron, we will have some opportunity to express that view. And so now let me turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, February the 20th, 2026. Aries. There is stuff going on in your sign. We have the moon, obviously, in Aries, and we also have a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So yeah, you've got these two outer planets in your sign. At the beginning of the day, perhaps yesterday, depends on your time zone, you had the moon making conjunctions to Saturn and Neptune. And so, you can feel it. You can feel, what it's all about. And maybe you're not entirely happy about it. So, I do think that these planets, Saturn and Neptune, they're making this conjunction, and that might be a reminder of, what you can do and what you can't do, or what you can't do and what you should do. You may feel that there is indeed plenty you would like to do, but you can certainly see the obstacles. There are a lot of reasons why it just might be that you're dealing with impossible ambitions, not because we're dealing with fantasy, but instead it's about just hard work. You look at the road ahead, and yeah, it looks tough. But these planets, Saturn and Neptune, they're going to be in Aries for some time. And right now with a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it just might seem hopeless. You look at what you need to do, what you'd like to do, and it just seems really, really like sort of hard work, and the responsibility might really feel as if it's on your shoulders. But I'm confident that you can get it done, that you can sort it out. And I'm not just talking about what you're doing today. I'm talking about something longer term. How you are sort of looking forward into the future. So although you might have doubts about what can be done, I think that these doubts are not entirely realistic. Or maybe you're just being over-realistic. One doesn't normally associate Aries with being over-realistic. Aries is a sign that wants to do stuff, wants to take the initiative, and you look at how you can take the initiative, and it doesn't seem that you have much scope, but you still want to do something. The moon is making a square to Jupiter, so with this moon square Jupiter, if you feel there's nothing constructive you can do, then you might be tempted to do something which is not constructive. That might be how moon square Jupiter works. You see what is, you look around you, and you maybe see that there are certain things that are easy to apply yourself. If you can apply yourself in a way that's easy, well, just go for it. Well, at least that might be your view. But you don't want to, cause, unnecessary trouble. You don't want to, give in to temptation. And indeed, there is, some possibility, of overindulgence with moon square Jupiter. It's not what you want to do, but it might be how you feel, and you might just thinking, what else can you do? But if you come to those kind of conclusions, it's perhaps because you're looking at things in a way that is just too short term. I think that you do need a longer term view, and just because you in the short term feel trapped, that you just can't do anything. You look so many things you'd like to do, but you can't do stuff, and it almost feels like the path ahead is blocked. All sorts of blocks. There may be psychological blocks. It might be just physical things in the way, like garbage bags cluttering the entrances and exits. I'm not saying literally garbage bags are in the way, but it might be. But it just might be just garbage from the past, or perhaps other people's garbage. Maybe physical garbage, could be emotional garbage, but it's just all there, and it could be frustrating, but I don't think it needs to be frustrating. And you shouldn't forget, Aries, that Mars is in Aquarius. It's in mutual reception to Saturn, and I think that Mars stays in Aquarius until I think it's March the 2nd. So you've got nearly 2 weeks. nearly a fortnight while Mars is in Aquarius. And why is that important? It's important because Mars and Saturn are in mutual reception. Mars and Saturn are in each other's signs. Saturn rules Aquarius, Mars rules Aries. So with this Mars-Saturn mutual reception, that gives you a fundamental strength. So it's not so bad, Saturn being in your sign, even though it is conjunct Neptune. Saturn is about motivation, it's about hard work, and it's also about understanding the importance of time. Saturn is a great chronocrator, ruler of time, and you have to understand time. And I think that's really important as far as today is concerned. Not just today. So over the next couple of weeks, understand time. Time can go slowly. You might want to achieve everything at once, and because you want to achieve everything at once, you take short-term obstacles perhaps too seriously. And if you take a longer-term view, then I think that today it might be slightly frustrating, but I do think that you can take the first step forward. Taurus. Part of you, Taurus, doesn't really want to get involved. Why should you want to get involved? Things are difficult. Things are complicated. We've got a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune, and this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, well, it says something about society, other people's reactions, and also your own and other people's worries. We are living in worried times. Everyone is worried about something, and it's sometimes maybe just difficult to hold everything together with this Saturn Neptune conjunction. That's what we're trying to do. Saturn is trying to hold things together, but Neptune is being constantly disruptive. Not even disruptive. Disruptive. At least with disruption, you can see it, you can understand it. It's more about undermining. Slowly, Neptune. Neptune undermines Saturn, or at least that's how it feels. The structure gets slowly undermined, and you can feel it, Taurus. And you might be of the view that it's just a situation where really there's not a great deal you can do. And if you want to get anything done, it's going to be hard work, and perhaps to an extent you should accept that. And one response to the situation, Taurus, might be to communicate, to talk, explain, tell people what's on your mind, or maybe even just think about it. But even then, if you do think about it or talk about it, it might not be easy. Things could be just, rather sluggish, slow thoughts dwelling on the problems rather than the possibilities, and getting people to express themselves, indeed getting yourself to express, to say what's on your mind. That might be hard work. And that is another reason why you just might feel that really there's not much point. Although having said that, Venus is still in Pisces. Venus is your ruler. It's right in the middle of Pisces. 12 Pisces. It's moving towards the central part of the sign. It's starting to make a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. So this aspect is starting to make itself felt. So just as you're feeling a little bit negative, as you're feeling that there's not much point. There's not much point in interacting. Just as you have these feelings, you can perhaps start to see the first green shoots. Venus trine Jupiter. It's a nice aspect, and it's it's an aspect that, in fact, will allow you, in the end, to be yourself and to say what's on your mind, and you can be perhaps more sort of free and easy. But right now, this Venus trine Jupiter may not be so strongly emphasized. There are certain people maybe you can get on with, you can talk to, but it's still a bit slow. And so under those circumstances, perhaps you should sort of wait it out. I mean, the moon is now at noon New York time. The moon is at 12 Aries, and soon enough it will move into Taurus. So over the weekend, I mean, it's now Friday, but over the weekend the moon will move into your sign, and I think that when the moon moves into your sign, moves into Taurus, you're going to feel better. So perhaps as you move towards the end of a working week, things just seem a bit slow, and you kind of want to just pack up and go home, and that's an absolutely reasonable response. But maybe once the pressure goes, once any feelings of responsibility start to move into the background, you're going to feel better about yourself, and at the same time you can start to become a lot more optimistic. So Taurus, I mean, the general message is, I'm not convinced that Friday is going to be a great day. I'm not saying it's going to be a terrible day, but I do feel that over the next few days into the weekend, things will get better. Gemini. We have the moon continuing to move through Aries, or moving into Aries. Of course, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon will move into Aries, very early this morning, well before dawn. So, the moon in Aries, from a Gemini perspective, that's not so bad. I mean, Aries and Gemini are two signs which have a natural rapport with one another, and having the moon in a fire sign, is always good news, because Geminis can sometimes think too much, and the thoughts can go round and round and round, and they don't achieve anything. And so when the moon is in Aries, it sort of gives you a sort of a blast of energy, and you start to see what might be possible, and you become sort of more sort of active and dynamic. And from a social perspective, it's good to have the moon in Aries. I think you can move from one place to another, one group of people to another. At least that's how you'd like it all to work out. Though we should not forget that Mercury is starting to slow down. Mercury is your ruler. So how fast is Mercury going? I mean, it's really annoying. So I have this ephemeris. This is an ephemeris which has the positions of the planets from 1950 to 2050, over 100 years. I mean, it's good to have all the positions of planets contained in 100 years, but it's a bit bulky. I used to have this booklet called the Ephemeris, and it was called Raphael's Ephemeris, which would just be one small booklet for each year. And it's been out since the end of the 19th century, end of the 18th century. And as far as I know, the Raphael's Ephemeris for this year, 2026, has not yet been published, and this feels like a bit of a disaster. So it's why I have to pick up this clunky book to just see how fast Mercury is moving at the moment, and that's certainly something that we should know. So today, at the moment, Mercury is moving. At it's moving approximately something like 54 arc minutes a day. So that's a bit slow. I mean, it's average. Mercury can move geocentric, can when it's at its fastest, I think, can move over 2 degrees a day. But that is a reminder that Mercury is slowing down. It's getting ready to go retrograde. It's not there yet, but soon enough Mercury will go retrograde. And so perhaps, Gemini, you're starting to feel this retrograde, not retrograde motion, but this slowing down. And things are not quite as fast as they used to be. You might not be quite as fast as you used to be, and other people may just seem a bit more sluggish. They're not quite there, and they seem to be holding back on something. And it's important, Gemini, that you don't take this too seriously. You still got things to do. It is a Friday. It's the end of a working week. If you are working, I think that you can have a reasonably good Friday with Mercury in a high profile sign in your chart in Pisces, and we've got Venus moving towards a trine of Jupiter. That Venus trine Jupiter is that's a great aspect, and I think that you can benefit from this aspect. Now it's it's 3 degrees apart. It's not totally exact, but it does indicate that if you make the effort, you can get round other people's sluggishness. Yeah, other people are sluggish. They're not perhaps being as supportive as they should be, but if you make the effort, if you try to be emotionally aware, and you're prepared to perhaps listen to what other people are saying and feel out the vibes, then I think that you can really boost your own interests. You have your interests. Perhaps you've got ambitions. There are things connected with money that you might want to sort out, and that is a theme for Geminis at the moment. Don't forget, Jupiter's in Cancer. Jupiter stays in Cancer till the summer, and Jupiter in Cancer. Cancer is a sign in the Gemini chart which is financially orientated, and so with Venus making a trine to Jupiter, in fact Mercury will soon make a trine to Jupiter as soon as it goes retrograde, because Mercury will go retrograde pretty soon. And I think that those aspects, as far as I'm concerned, look fortunate. So even if people don't seem to be forthcoming, or not just people, but authority figures, people you are relying on in the material sense, if they don't seem to be forthcoming, it's important, Gemini, that you don't give up. You keep going. You keep working away. And one aspect that we've got is Moon sextile Pluto, and Moon sextile Pluto does allow you to be persuasive. I mean, it's not entirely easy to be persuasive, but I think that you know how to handle yourself. And don't forget, Mercury is in Pisces. Mercury is in a water sign. It's a sign that is emotionally aware. Of course, the average Gemini, is not known for their emotionality. I mean, of course, you've got to look at the wider chart. Everyone has emotions, but it's not in a way your primary mode of expression. But I think your understanding of emotion, the emotional realities, is today is going to be good enough. Cancer. There are certainly reasons, Cancer, to have doubts and to feel that maybe it's not possible. Whatever it is, it's not possible. It can't be done. That might be how you're thinking about today. I mean, after all, what have we got today? We've got a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is in the 1st degree of Aries. That in itself is important. It's not just the fact that it's in Aries, it's in the 1st degree of Aries. It's close to the Aries point. And, Aries is a sign that matters for all of us, but it matters in particular if you're a Cancer. It says something about where you are heading, where you feel you're heading, where is your direction, and you are taking it seriously. But Saturn and Neptune, Saturn is a responsibility, but Neptune is just the swirl of chaos, emotional chaos, maybe collective chaos. You know, remember, Neptune is a collective planet. It's a transpersonal planet. You know, it says something about the cosmos. You know, where, you know, what the universe is doing, where the universe is heading, where it thinks it's heading. And so with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it's very difficult to get answers. It's very difficult to know where you're going. It seems hopeless. But this is the world in which we're living. Nothing is clear. No one knows what's going on. In fact, you could say, Cancer, if anyone knows what's going on, maybe it's you, even though you find that difficult to admit. I mean, it might be a situation where the blind are being led by the half blind, and the half blind is you. So if you can see, even if it's only through one eye, then the responsibility is down to you. And so it's not as bad as it looks. And in a relative sense, I do think that you actually know what's going on. Deep down, you know what's going on. You know, externally, things might just seem totally chaotic. You know, particularly like today, we've got no planets in Earth signs except for Uranus. But you get it. You know in which way you should. You know in which way you should be heading, and yeah, it is difficult, but the moon is making a sextile to Pluto. I mean, that's the aspect that the moon's, you know, the day starts with a moon sextile Pluto. Moon sextile Pluto, you know, is being able to transform not just your environment, but indeed your own perceptions, and being able to realize that things aren't as bad as they look. And then the day ends with a square between the moon and Jupiter. Moon square Jupiter. Moon is in Aries. Jupiter is in your sign, and with that moon square Jupiter, I think that you do have, you know, a good understanding of yourself, a better understanding than you realize, and you have the motivation, and it's motivation that matters. However difficult things are, in the end, Cancer, you know what's important, and you also know that something is looking after you, because Jupiter's in Cancer, and Jupiter's going to stay in Cancer till the summer, and that is a major kind of medium to long term trend going on in your life. Jupiter, the major benefic in your sign, and it's going to look after you. And the moon square Jupiter is kind of telling you, well, if you are being looked after, if you are being protected, then you don't have to worry so much, and you can do more than you realize. So, Cancer, I think it's okay to push yourself today. You know, just because you think you can't see, actually you can, even if it feels like you're looking at the world through one eye. Leo. Well, Leo, you are probably getting used to the sun moving through Pisces. I mean, the sun is what now at 2 degrees 4 Pisces, and so it's a kind of a different way of being, isn't it? I mean, the sun, having left Aquarius, and now it's in a water sign, and for the average Leo, this can be a time of year which is perhaps a little difficult. It feels that things are just a bit heavy. There is a weight on your shoulders, and maybe it's an emotional weight. You can see how complicated things really are, and yeah, things are complicated. But are they specifically complicated to you, Leo? I don't think so. And at the beginning of this video, when I was just doing a sort of a general sort of introduction, I mentioned the fact that the sun is on the Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune, Pluto midpoints, and you indeed you can see it. So here, there's the Sun at 2 degrees Pisces, and there's Pluto, and there's the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So you can see that the Sun is approximately on the Pluto Neptune and the Saturn Pluto midpoint, and that says something about you, and it's saying that you are kind of aware of these sort of collective forces, and you're aware about some of the problems they represent. Sun on a Neptune Pluto midpoint. Neptune and Pluto, yeah, they're in sextile. Neptune and Pluto have been in sextile for ages and ages and ages. I really want to do a video about this Neptune Pluto sextile because it's been around for so long. All of us were born with a Neptune Pluto sextile. It really defines a massive generation of people. I mean, it almost defines, the post-war generation, and which just goes on to the present day because Neptune and Pluto stay in sextile, and with the Sun on a Neptune Pluto midpoint, that says something about your wider generation. Everyone around you, and the things that modern men and women have to deal with. It's all there, and it's difficult because the Sun is not just on a Neptune-Pluto midpoint; it's also conjunct the Saturn-Pluto midpoint, and of course the Saturn is of course a faster-moving planet, and than sort of Neptune and Pluto. So Sun on a Saturn-Pluto, it occurs to you that just things really are difficult. Really difficult, maybe unsolvable. At least that's how you think. But I must emphasize that you are just picking up what everyone else feels, and that is what astrology is often about. It is the interplay between the personal and the collective. Sometimes look at things from a personal level, sometimes it's a collective level. It's always that constant interplay, and that's perhaps what you are experiencing. It is this question, what should you take seriously? What should you take personally? And what is something just generational and collective? And understanding those differences does matter. And now, with the Sun in Pisces, you are really aware of how complicated things are, but you don't want to make things too complicated. And you do need to give yourself some space, some room to see, and I think you can find that room to see. The Moon is in Aries, the Moon is in a fire sign, and with a Moon in a fire sign, you have a chance to perhaps move beyond things. And Moon is beginning of the day, makes a sextile to Pluto, so perhaps you need to kind of transform your perceptions and start to differentiate between the personal and the collective. And when you look at yourself, and you compare yourself to other people, you maybe will see that things aren't so bad, and that once you're able to rise above things and see the broader picture at every level, it's the world in general, perhaps history in general. Once you get that view, I think that you're going to start to feel a lot better. You're going to feel a lot more confident. Virgo. Nothing is entirely easy. It might seem that there are just difficult things to deal with, and that might be linked with the fact that we have got a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So with this Saturn Neptune conjunction, you feel that things are perhaps slower than usual, as well as being more complicated than usual. Things are being held back, and maybe you are being held back. You are not revealing everything. There are some things that you absolutely want to keep to yourself, and that's because you're probably sort of more sensitive than usual. And you might want to do things, but if you try, you're just going to think that, well, you're going to really hit a brick wall. And I mean, unfortunately, certain people are not going to be very helpful. So if you look around you and you try to talk to people, get their opinions, try to get close to them, you might be rebuffed, or it might appear that everyone is in their own space, in their own world, and they're looking after their own interests, and maybe they just haven't got time for you, and that is just the reality of the situation. So, Virgo, I think you have to be honest, and it's not just about people in general, it's also about particular relationships. Yeah, the sun has just gone into Pisces, your opposite sign. Mercury and Venus are in Pisces as well, so it would be natural, Virgo, for you to think that other people are important, other people are there for you. That would be obvious to you at the moment, but it might not feel obvious because everyone's got their own issues, and they haven't got perhaps the time or the inclination to look at things on a sort of a more sort of general sort of level. They haven't perhaps they haven't got time to listen to what you've got to say. But do consider your own responsibility here. I mean, you are taking the world seriously in the same way that everyone else is taking the world seriously. And because you are taking the world seriously, and because you're taking yourself seriously, then you might not have much time for other people. So it may not just be someone else's fault. And so the question is, what do you do about it? I think the best approach today would be just to be serious and just concentrate on what matters. And if something is important to you, really important to you, then there's a good chance that it's going to be really important to another person. So perhaps what you're looking for is shared interest. So if you and another person have the same interest, it might be a very material interest, a very practical interest. If you've got the same interest, then there can be scope for limited cooperation. I say limited cooperation because cooperation is not going to go, or is unlikely to go beyond the matter at hand. So if you just remember that, then Virgo, I don't think that you'll be disappointed. Libra. The main aspect today, I mean the aspect that kind of dominates proceedings, is the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I mean it's exact. I mean, but these are two slow-moving planets, and so while it's true that they are exact today, I think they're exact at 4:53 p.m. London time. So that means if you're sort of New York or Eastern Standard Time, they'd be exact at sort of 11:53 in the morning. So it depends where you are, but I wouldn't get too worried about the exact time when those two planets come together. It's just a time when things are just somewhat confusing, and other people are confusing, or at least other people appear confusing. And it's just difficult. It's just difficult to know how to respond, and it may be a time when you don't get clear answers. I mean, you do get some answers, maybe you get many answers, but do those answers really get to the point? Well, I don't think they necessarily do, and you just might find that certain relationships are just confusing. You don't know where you don't know where you stand, and you can't necessarily believe what anyone says. And that's not because anyone's necessarily lying. It's just because people just don't know. But Libra, it's important that you take some responsibility. You can't control what other people are doing, saying, or thinking, or you can't control how they're presenting themselves, but you can make sure that your own corner of the world is as straightforward as is possible, and you can try your hardest to be open and clear. And that is sometimes something that the average Libra finds difficult. I mean, Librans, for example, they find it difficult to say no. They often like to make everyone happy. That's how they work. And so, because of that, some Librans, it might give the wrong impression. They might act in a certain way, and people take them at face value, and actually that's not what they meant at all. And so, for your own part, you can decide not to get involved in the chaos of the Saturn conjunct Neptune. You can just try to be as honest and upfront as you possibly can. I mean, okay, I'm not saying that you should, give away secrets or tell people about things you don't want to discuss, but in terms of the important matters, we need as much clarity as possible. Everyone needs clarity, and you can just do your part by being clear. Maybe no one else is being clear, but that's not your problem, and there's only so much you can do. And with the moon still moving through Aries, it is a time when you perhaps have to spend time thinking about what other people are doing and how other people are going to respond to you, and you're open to that. But with the moon moving through Aries, there's a certain temptation to not take responsibility. But I would say you shouldn't fall for that temptation. As far as is possible, take responsibility and be ready to tell the truth as far as you can, and just don't have too many expectations. Communicating with people, however you communicate, is going to be hard, and things might be slow. Okay, you might get the words out, but the rate at which people comprehend might be slow. People might not just understand, or might not want to understand. So, as far as is possible, Libra, it's important that you are clear. You don't want any scope for misinterpretation. Scorpio. I'm not saying that it's going to be an entirely easy day, but I'm not really telling anyone that it's going to be an easy day. I'm afraid in my horoscopes for today, I'm being a bit downbeat. Maybe sort of negative. It's somewhat negative in places. That's just the way it is. I think that we've got this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I think, for one thing, and this Saturn-Neptune conjunction inevitably creates uncertainty and maybe worry. There are certainly things to be worried about, but these things to be worried about are not necessarily personal. They probably aren't personal. Now, as far as you're concerned, Scorpio, try not to obsess. I think that's important. Important not to obsess. There might be just particular things you read about that could really bother you. I mean, maybe of a health from a health perspective. For example, I was sent an email talking about headphones and plastic headphones. So plastic headphones, the plastics in the headphones can get into your body and can cause all sorts of long-term problems. And I think someone was even saying that these plastics might have a sort of a feminizing impact, in a sort of a physical way. And so it's just another thing to worry about, isn't it? And I was just reading this. I think it was a Facebook thread talking about it, and someone said, yeah, in theory these chemicals can do this, but they are actually pretty much bound to the plastic, so they're not going to leach into your body. But still, Scorpio, I think that these kind of issues might bother you. Maybe they should bother you. Not necessarily with plastic headphones, maybe PFAS, forever chemicals, whatever it is, and you're realizing that you are being exposed to stuff. This might be how Saturn Neptune works. I mean, I'm not necessarily just talking about today. That for you, Scorpio, the Saturn Neptune conjunction is quite health orientated, and it's good to have legitimate concerns about your health, but there may be concerns about your health which really are about everyone. And I'm thinking particularly about plastics and pollution and maybe global warming and all the things that can get into your body through the food you eat. I mean, on a positive note, with Saturn Neptune, you can certainly take steps if you feel it's important. If you're worried about PFAS, maybe you can, and you've got the money, you can maybe have some kind of reverse osmosis filter for your house or whatever you do, or apartment or flat, whatever. So yeah, you could do that, but just don't take it too seriously. Don't take any particular detail too seriously. And you might read into things, well, the worst possible scenario. But in the end, we've got to live, and we've got to live in an environment, where there are always going to be pollutants, and it's not like pollution is anything modern. We have different kinds of pollutants. In earlier eras, we had, you had sort of, lead pipes, and you had mercury was routinely used, and you had arsenic wallpaper, and when it got damp, the arsenic in the wallpaper just got everywhere. So one threat is perhaps replaced by another threat, but I don't want to minimize the kinds of threats we're dealing with. I suppose now you've got pollution that can not just affect humans, but can sort of damage every wildlife. You think about how the oceans are being trashed, and animals in the oceans are getting tangled up in plastics, are consuming microplastic, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, these are things that you could worry about, and you may not just be worrying about yourself. If you, for example, have an animal, you have a pet, you might be thinking about your pet's health. Maybe you should have another look at how your pet is. If there's something wrong, think about it, but don't obsess about it. And all you can do is do what is in your power, Scorpio, and that is just enough. You don't control what's going on in the Pacific Ocean, but you do control your living space, maybe a small part of your community. And so, as far as that is concerned, you can do your best. There's a woman that she volunteers. Year in, day out, she sort of is trudging through the roads, picking up other people's garbage. I'm not saying you should do that, but it might be something that you feel you want to do, because it's all about power, and realizing the limitations of your power, and knowing that there are certain things you can organize and sort out, but there are certain things which are just beyond you. And additionally, you don't want to get involved in anything which is too dirty and unpleasant. And I mean that both in a literal and a sort of symbolic way. You might be inclined to, but I suspect it's not really worth the effort. Sagittarius. Well, the moon continues moving through Aries, or is moving into Aries. That's good. I mean, Aries is a fire sign. You are a fire sign. And so, with the moon moving through Aries, you can be quite focused on yourself and what you can do, and on what you can do well. Now, if you've been looking at my forecasts for the 12 signs, this is the 9th sign I've covered, because I always start at Aries. You might have noticed that I've been quite negative for everyone. Now, as far as you're concerned, I don't think there is so much scope for negativity here. So, of all the 12 signs, it may well be that Sagittarius, relatively speaking, has the best day. So that's something to be happy about. And we have got the moon making a sextile to Pluto at the beginning of the day. I think that moon sextile Pluto is an aspect which is fairly empowering. You have a clear sense of what you're capable of doing, and at the same time you're able to communicate it effectively. And at the same time, also, you in general, you take yourself seriously. There is a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in Aries, as well as the moon is also in Aries, and that Saturn Neptune could be about a serious approach, and that things aren't perfect, but you also know that there is a way around it, and it just could be that your Sagittarian optimism is actually on reasonably good form, certainly on relatively good form, compared with other people. But it is a lot of pessimism flying around, and you perhaps take the view that you can make things happen. You know that it's not easy, but you've got the energy, you've got the dynamism, and Sagittarius, I think that you're going to be quite good at motivating other people. I mean, other people are going to be difficult to motivate in general. And so it could require some extra work. But, if anyone can be a motivator, Sagittarius, all things being equal, then, I would have said it is you. Additionally, don't forget that Venus is moving towards a trine to Jupiter. It's only a few degrees away from this trine. And, over the weekend, I think that trine becomes exact. I'm not exactly sure when the exact Venus-Jupiter trine is, whether it's on Monday or on Sunday. I'm not sure. But it's pretty close. And, Jupiter is your ruler. Venus, Jupiter's in its exaltation. Venus is also exalted in Pisces, and that Venus-Jupiter trine, it's a great aspect, and it means that over the next few days you just may feel not just more powerful but also comfortable. You may just feel comfortable in your own passive power, and it may occur to you that actually you are fine where you are, and that you don't have to strive. And having that sense of comfort right now, Sagittarius, is really important. So, I think that, in many respects, it's a weekend. Well, I don't really want to talk too much about the weekend, because there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say about the weekend. But over the weekend, that's what you should be striving for. There will be other challenges in terms of a weekend, but comfort is something that you can find, and you can. There can be moments of real relaxation, which are sort of almost spiritual in their nature. Capricorn. Saturn is conjunct Neptune today, and it's exact. You've probably been feeling this conjunction as it's been sort of getting closer and closer, and now it's here. And so Saturn is your ruler. Saturn is in Aries. It's fallen in Aries, but it's in mutual reception to Mars. So Saturn's position is not too bad. I mean, it's powerful, but it needn't be too bad. But then it's conjunct Neptune. So if Saturn is conjunct Neptune, then Capricorn, you might feel sort of moments of uncertainty. I mean, that's only natural. I mean, Neptune is a planet that breeds uncertainty. I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, we should not be comfortable with the status quo, with the old order. Things change. Things always change. And yet that might be how you feel. And I mentioned all of this yesterday. I said that, yes, Capricorns can be very concerned about change, because Capricorn is a sign that looks back at its own history. You can see change, and you just know that change isn't always positive. In fact, things tend to get worse over time. I mean, that can be the Capricorn view. And with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, what can you hold on to? And Neptune may create sort of moments of nervousness when you see the past almost sort of disintegrating, the old order going, and that can be really, really distressing. But Saturn is in mutual reception to Mars. That strengthens Saturn considerably, and this mutual reception will continue, I think, until the beginning of March. So you've got a week or two left of this mutual reception, and so that does allow you to hold things together. And also, Capricorn, you should probably see this Saturn and Neptune conjunction as a benefit, as something that perhaps needs to happen. You can't be too rigid in your view of the past, and sometimes you have to see another view. Things do change. If things don't change, they will inevitably collapse, because if things don't change, they decay and they fall in on themselves. And so ask yourself how this change can be managed and how you can respond to it all. So Capricorn, with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it's important to keep your eyes open, and at the same time not to feel that you're sort of on the periphery. That's what can happen. So you can have an impact, and you can say things. You can complain. If you're, for example, in an American city and you don't like what's going on in your city, you can go to city council meetings. You might be ignored, but you can make a public comment, and you can make public comments every couple of weeks, and you can mobilize people. And perhaps with this Saturn conjunct Neptune, you start to see how, rather than being a victim of chaos, you can be the source of chaos, and you can manage chaos, and you can be the one who is destabilizing things, who is creating change, who's making other people nervous. And perhaps that's the real message of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. If you want to feel comfortable where you are, and you want to sort of hold on to the past, or at least as far as is possible, you've got to make other people feel uncomfortable. You know how to do it, Capricorn. You're very good at that. If you're honest with yourself. So I think that you need to think about your own power. And this is a time, Capricorn, where things are sort of moving towards the bottom of the chart. If we take a chart and we we put the sign Capricorn, on the left, like it is here. If you're, I don't know, you may not be looking at the video, you may just be listening, but if Capricorn is on the left, you can see that all the planets are tending towards the bottom. So this is kind of the beginning. It's a kind of a seeding moment. Yeah, sure, you don't know what's going on perhaps, but it is a beginning. And just consider the way in which you can be powerful. Remember, Capricorn is a powerful sign. Yesterday I was talking about the Cultural Revolution in China. I mean, the Cultural Revolution was a dramatic event. And who initiated the Cultural Revolution? Well, of course, Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao was a Capricorn. Chairman Mao, well, you may have your own thoughts about Chairman Mao, but for better or for worse, he was in control. So Capricorns can really make things happen, and so maybe you need to unleash your inner Chairman Mao. Aquarius. Mars is still in Aquarius, still, and we also got Pluto in Aquarius. But with Mars in Aquarius, it's in mutual reception to Saturn. And so, with this mutual reception between Mars and Saturn, I think that you are probably in a stronger position than you realize. You might be quite sort of negative about things, and you perhaps still getting used to Saturn in Aries, but don't underestimate yourself with this Mars Saturn mutual reception. You are in a position where you can definitely make things happen, and you're able to communicate pretty well. I mean, it's difficult to fully get your message across at the moment, because of this Saturn Neptune conjunction. But if you make the effort, I think that you will in the end sort of make progress. And also at the moment you're looking for change. I mean, fundamentally, Aquarius, you want change. You're not entirely happy with the way things are, and you kind of want to be ever so slightly disruptive. And if things aren't to your taste, maybe you can turn things upside down. And with Saturn conjunct Neptune, you think that poor Saturn is being undermined by Neptune. Saturn is of course ruler of Aquarius. So poor Saturn is being undermined by Neptune, and it's difficult to know what to do. You try and do something and it's destroyed, or it not just destroyed, it gets washed away. But maybe you should take on some of the attributes of Neptune. Maybe Neptune can be your friend. Remember, Aquarius is a fixed sign, and sometimes Aquarius can be too fixed. You can be quite rigid in your beliefs and in your routines and in your actions. And Neptune comes along, and it wants to dissolve things. It's not trying to dissolve you. It's it's not like you're not like the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz getting a bucket of water thrown at you. It's not like that. Some things need to be dissolved. Some things that you've just taken too seriously, they've become too much a part of your life. They're not really useful anymore. And they can be dissolved. And if something gets dissolved, that makes you stronger. And it just might be that you should regard Neptune as some kind of solvent. You might have the past and things from the past which are not working anymore. They're just stuck to your body. I mean, you're not literally stuck to your body. They're there, and Neptune just washes it all away, and you can kind of start again. And this relates to everything, and it's an opportunity to rededicate yourself to something, rededicate yourself to a new set of ideas which are perhaps in accord with a new era. And so I think the Saturn and Neptune conjunction is going to create its own challenges, but I think that there are challenges that you're certainly able to deal with. And, as I said, Mars and Saturn are in mutual reception with one another, are in each other's signs. So, broadly speaking, your position really, isn't too bad. Pisces. The Sun is moving through the first degrees of your sign. So I think that, most Pisceans are hopefully enjoying the beginning of the Piscean season. Of course, that's not every Pisces. Of course, Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, has his sun in Pisces. He's not here. He's not a Pisces rising, but he does have his sun in Pisces, and clearly, he's just been arrested, so he's probably not a happy Piscean. But overall, with the Sun moving through your sign, and Mercury there as well, and Venus, this is a reasonably good time for you. You have a relatively strong sense of yourself and what you can do, and what you can achieve. But there may be moments of doubt, and one reason for this might be the fact that there is a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, how one interprets that Saturn-Neptune injunction, may depend on your perspective. Now, if you believe, which I don't, by the way, if you were to believe that Neptune is a ruler of Pisces, I don't think it is, I must make that clear, but if you were to believe that, then you would say, well, Saturn's conjunct Neptune, that could be quite a difficult time for Pisceans, and those who believe in modern rulers, I try to be open-minded, would probably point to Andrew, because Andrew, so a modern approach might be to say, oh, well, Andrew has his sun in Pisces, Neptune rules Pisces, so if Saturn is conjunct Neptune, then it's miserable. Then it's a bad event. So yeah, you could say that, but I wouldn't say that. There are other reasons why Andrew is having issues that he has got, and he has just been arrested. And instead, I would say, well, you might well be sensitive to the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Neptune is a planet which certainly has an association with Pisces. I think it has an association with Pisces, and so with Saturn and Neptune, all of us are feeling that there are restrictions in front of us. There are things we would like to do. We would like to dissolve perhaps into something higher than ourselves and become part of the ocean. But Saturn says, no, you can't do that. We've got to keep things together. And so there is that tension with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And as far as this particular Saturn-Neptune conjunction is concerned, it is in Aries. So the average Pisces might feel that there's a financial issue here. When you think about money, there could be quite a lot of uncertainty, just not quite sure what's going on, how things are going to unfold, and there may be particular aspects of your finances that you find rather unsettling. And the question is it personal, or is it something more collective? A lot of people are worried about money. It's not just you, it's not just me, it's everyone to an extent. Okay, it's not everyone, but a lot of people are worried about money. There are financial fears are all over the place, and I think that you may be picking up on that, and you perhaps are thinking about the future, and whether or not the future is as secure as it used to seem. But I must make it clear, I'm not saying anything personal here, and you shouldn't forget that you've got the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in Pisces in your sign. Venus in Pisces is starting to make a trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter is your ruler, of course. I think Jupiter is your ruler. I don't think Neptune is your ruler. and Jupiter is in Cancer, it's exalted in Cancer, and Venus is making this trine to Jupiter. It's a great aspect. And over the next few days, as you move into the weekend, as this trine between Venus and Jupiter gets closer, I think that you can really benefit from it. You can benefit from it in terms of just feeling happier, and also being able to get on with people relatively well, and in a way that where you are respected, and in particular, where your creativity is respected. I mean, that matters, and creativity is something you should be enjoying, and as far as is possible over the next few days, provided it's wholesome and healthy and legal. I mean, do try to find ways of enjoying yourself over the weekend, new ways of enjoying yourself, that are fundamentally a part of yourself. So although to begin with, Pisces, things might seem a little bit difficult and uncertain, I think you need to go with it. And being a Pisces, you're quite sensitive. You kind of can get a feel for it all, and it's possible that you can in the end sort of benefit from the situation. Maybe if other people are uncertain, you're going to perhaps be a little bit more certain than they are, and that might give you an advantage. So those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and now it is time to switch to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was really very appropriate. I got hexagram number 59. 59. Dispersion. It's the rains, it's the floods, everything getting washed away. And we're getting this hexagram on a day in which Saturn is conjunct Neptune. So Neptune's role is perhaps to wash away the structure of things. Saturn is perhaps just being a bit too rigid. It's not that Saturn itself can be washed away. Saturn can never be washed away. But Saturn perhaps needs to get used to something new. Saturn's been in Pisces for a long time. It's made the transition to Aries, and now the floods come, and we have to start again. And when we talk about floods, that might sound dangerous. Of course, floods are dangerous. I know that Europe has had a lot of flooding. Spain has, but in a symbolic way, the dispersion, represented, by this hexagram. I mean, if you look at the structure of it, you have got the bottom three lines. The bottom trigram represents the abyss, and the top trigram represents the wind. So it's like the wind comes and it stirs everything up, and it stirs the waters up, and you get everything gets thrown into the air and thrown under the water, over the water, goes all over the place. And there are going to be moments during this storm where we just don't know what's going on. We're in a state of worrisome panic. We're just getting thrown around like a rag doll. At least that might be how it feels while you're in the middle of it. But the I Ching tends to be quite optimistic about this. It's saying, well, sometimes it just needs to happen, and you have to think about what happens after the storm. Maybe things are going to be okay. Things are going to be better. Now we have two moving lines here. The bottom line moves, and the second from the bottom line moves. And the bottom line, okay, it's a little bit dangerous. The bottom line, it's talking about quite a dangerous situation. Yeah, maybe we can see the storm clouds coming. It's on the way, and we need to take action. And one of the themes of the bottom line is rescue. There is a chance of rescue, getting out of a difficult situation, but we have to act quickly. So when we see those first clouds, we don't just sit and watch. We have to do something about it and get ourselves out of a difficult situation. And then the second line moves. The storm is here. We can't completely avoid it, but support is available. I think that's one thing. So we're not on our own, and when the storm does arrive, we may be of a view that this is a complete disaster, total disaster, and we are prepared for that disaster. And then the storm arrives, but what does it do? It just moves us on. I mean, things can move quickly. So if you're in a boat and there is a storm, you could regard that as something that's going to sink you. But if you can handle it, you might regard it as let me get it right, not a headwind, but a tailwind. A tailwind, it moves you on, suddenly moves you much further than you expected. And so when the storm has finished, you realize you're actually not in such a bad position. And that leads to the second hexagram. And the second hexagram is hexagram number 42, which is increase. It's a good hexagram. And it tells us that in the end, we are going to be able to benefit from the previous drama. So provided we don't completely get overwhelmed by the storm, provided we're able to weather that storm, which I think we can, then when the dust has settled, when the storm has calmed down, let's look around and say, well, the situation isn't so bad. And we have benefited in tangible ways. Maybe we've benefited in terms of knowledge, experience, feeling good about ourselves. Could also be that we've benefited in a material way. Maybe there's a way of taking financial advantage of it, or something happens, we understand something, and now just things are just you're looking a whole lot better. So this might all relate back to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and perhaps it's telling us how the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is going to unfold for us. We think about certainly dispersion and things going all over the place with Saturn-Neptune, but maybe it's just something to happen, something that just has to happen, and it just needn't be so bad. And the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is something that I do want to talk about now. So let's what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and I'm not going to spend very long on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I think I might return to the Saturn-Neptune theme in my video for the weekend, because I did want to talk about Andrew. So let's see. Here is the moment of. I think it's the moment. This is when the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is exact. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is exact at 4:53 London time on Friday. 4:53 in the afternoon, so that means it's going to be late morning. It'll be about 11:53 in New York Eastern Standard Time, 8:53 in the morning if you're in California, 8:53 in the morning if you're in British Columbia or California. Most of British Columbia, I think that there is that little enclave which is on mountain time. And yeah, if you're in Europe, that will be at 6:53. Most of Europe, that will be 6:53, 5:53 p.m. And yeah, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, that will be sometime on Saturday. So this Saturn-Neptune conjunction takes place at 0 degrees 45 Aries, and I think we've been building up to this Saturn-Neptune conjunction for some time. I mean, things really have been dissolving, and structures have been dissolving, and I'll be talking about Andrew in a moment. But an example of a structure you could say is the British monarchy, and it's kind of interesting that Andrew has been arrested just as this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is becoming exact, and it's a conjunction, but it is part of a wider cycle, and I really do think I need to go into the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in much greater detail. I think in my video for the weekend, and so this conjunction is perhaps breaking things down, but it's also in Aries. It's kind of like a pointer to Aries. Neptune's in Aries, Saturn's in Aries. The Pisces phase is now over. And so that might be part of what we're feeling. And in Pisces, things weren't very clear. People weren't sure. People were certainly concerned about, as I keep saying, they were sort of concerned about self-sacrifice and diversity and feeling you've got to sort of go out of your way to look after particular minorities. I'm not necessarily talking about ethnic minorities. I'm thinking more, for example, the minorities in terms of sexual orientation or the transgender and so forth. That was all very much Pisces, and now it's changed. And I think there's just been announcements by in the last couple of days when sort of biggest American banks, I think it's Goldman Sachs, was saying they've dropped the requirements for sort of ethnicity and gender and LGBTQ whatever in terms of employing managers, and other banks are doing that. And so I think this is a sign that Pisces is very much over, and so Saturn, this is part of what Saturn Neptune is about. But right now it is about things dissolving, and it's particularly important because it is on the Aries point. 0 degrees Aries is the world point. So things are falling apart, or being falling apart because they have to fall apart. The old ways of doing things, the old norms, the old rules, they are all going, and we are seeing very much evidence of this, and I think that we can see this with the arrest of Andrew, and that's what I want to talk about in this video, the rest of this video, because Andrew was arrested. He was arrested on that would be Thursday, February the 19th. They said shortly after 8 o'clock. So, I have set this chart for 8:05. I don't know whether that's the exact time. Maybe that gives us sort of late Aquarius rising. You can see that the sun has just gone into Pisces. And if we've got that time right for the arrest of Andrew, 8:05, if the ascendant was late Aquarius, well, firstly that ascendant would pick up the new moon. So the previous new moon, on 2 days earlier, the beginning of the Chinese New Year, was I think at 2850 Aquarius. So it's kind of not surprising that the ascendant is picking up on that. I mean, this is not set for London. This is set for Sandringham, which is in sort of eastern England. In I think it's in Norfolk, is it? And so that picks up the new moon. And look at Uranus. Uranus is square the ascendant. Again, if I've got that time right. And this new moon. It was perhaps difficult for sort of England and and the monarchy. I mean, if we look at the new moon, before the arrest, this is set for Sandringham. So we've got the new moon set for the arrest. There's a new moon on the midheaven. The new moon is what was on the midheaven. If we set the chart for London around, I mean, Sandringham, okay, it's quite a long way by English standards, by British standards from London, but by global standards it's nothing. Certainly by American standards, it's a relatively short distance. And so in that new moon, the new moon is on the midheaven, and it's square Uranus. So it's kind of not surprising that this new moon has been so dramatic for the UK and indeed for the royal family. And I did a video I just did a video talking about the curse of a fire horse. If you take 1066 as the birth of the UK, I mean, it's maybe a controversial view, but if you take 1066, the crowning of William the Conqueror, you know, England is a fire horse. This is the year of the fire horse has only just started, 2 days in, and Andrew gets arrested. That in a way is quite stunning. I'm going to do a Substack article on the fire horse. I'm hopefully going to put that up later today, and when I do, I'll put a link in the description. But I haven't finished it yet. So that new moon is certainly tells us, you know, quite a lot. And then there is Andrew himself. I have to be careful. I will, of course, probably by mistake, call him Prince Andrew every now and then, because that's what I got used to. But he is now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He is just a private person, and so here is his horoscope. So he has got Leo. He's got Leo rising, and he's got Chiron at 27 Aquarius. So this new moon was exactly on his Chiron. New moon was on his 8th house cusp. So Chiron on the 8th. I don't know. He's having to deal with the complexities of what he's been involved with, and he's probably feeling quite wounded. You know, Andrew does have his moon in Scorpio. So Uranus went stationary direct on, I think, February the 4th at around 27.5 Taurus. So Uranus was a couple of degrees from the opposition of the moon. It wasn't exactly there, but you could say that this was, describing what he was experiencing pretty well. And he's got moon square Chiron in his chart. Moon in Scorpio square Chiron. I mean, that could say something about his messed up childhood. He was the Queen's favorite child. He was indulged. He was indulged in such a way that it really sort of may have completely wrecked his personality, and because his sense of entitlement. Of course, that biography, but just got really devastating biography, was called Entitled, and so he has that moon square Chiron, which I think arguably is really activated, not just by transiting Uranus, but also by the new moon, by the fact that the new moon was on his Chiron and was kind of square his moon. And so that new moon, the beginning of the Chinese New Year, really did stir things up for him. So then there's a question, what kind of transits was he experiencing at the time of his arrest? And I'm not saying that there is necessarily anything going on, at least on the surface. I mean, on the surface, I mean, maybe you'll notice something I haven't. I didn't really have much time to prepare this because I just before I was doing a video, I noticed that Andrew had been arrested, and I thought, well, I've got to talk about it. I've got to say something about it, because that's what you're going to expect. And Mars is at 21 degrees Aquarius. It's moving through his 7th house, so that says something about his enemies, everyone who wants to bring him down. Of course, right now the world is pitted against him. That must be how it seems to him. And so Mars has been opposition his Uranus. He's got Uranus in the 1st house. Uranus in the 1st house. Well, he does things differently. I don't think he's used that Uranus in the 1st house in a particularly constructive way. So he's got Mars opposition his Uranus. There you can see Uranus. His Uranus. Opposition his Moon and square his Chiron. Now, Chiron's not shown in this chart, but it is there. So there are a few things going on, but this chart indicates that one shouldn't necessarily just be looking at transits. Of course, the big transit he's got is the Sun conjunct Sun. I mean, he had his solar return on the 18th, so things going on one's birthday. It doesn't always happen like that, but we then perhaps need to think very carefully about what is the nature of his Sun, given the fact that he's got this aspect. He's got this, he's got the Sun on his 8th house cusp. And by the way, he was arrested for, I should say, misconduct in public office. So he wasn't arrested for the allegations about the sexual stuff. The allegations, what he's been arrested for is, he was working for the government as in terms of trade, and he was given confidential information which he passed on to Epstein, and acting against his country's interests. I mean, that's kind of amazing, isn't it? You think that when you think about Epstein, and when you think about Andrew, and you think about Peter Mandelson, these people who were supposed to be acting on behalf of their country, it is alleged that they couldn't care less about their countries. They were acting arguably against their country's interests, and it shows, perhaps when one thinks about nationalism, that people always will put their own interests first. Even if they're a government minister, even if they're a member of a royalty, even if they're the brother of the king, self-interest trumps everything else. And maybe that's just part of human nature. Yeah, I'm sure there are things I've missed, but I don't think that the transits are particularly impressive. I mean, we do have a repetition of the Sun Mercury. I mean, so he's got Sun and Mercury in the 8th house, and at the time of his arrest, Mercury is conjunct his Mercury, and the Sun was conjunct his Sun. So there is something of a repeated theme here. So then there is Andrew's solar return, and the solar return took place the day before. So looking at his solar return for just before the day before he got arrested. I mean, this solar return is more interesting. I mean, Mars is Mars is in the 7th. Note we've got Leo rising. So Andrew has Leo rising in his natal chart. When you have a solar return which has also got your rising sign in it, that can indicate quite an important year. It can also be the case if you've got a solar return with a rising sign which is opposite your own rising sign. And so that ascendant at 16 degrees Leo is also quite close to his Uranus. So he's got his Uranus at sort of 18 Leo. So it picks up on his Uranus in the 1st house in his natal chart. So perhaps one might have expected something dramatic. Of course, we knew he was going to get arrested. You didn't need astrology to tell us this. So it's kind of almost sort of stating the obvious. But yeah, he does have Mars in the 7th house, and Mars again. He's got transiting Mars in his own natal chart, and he's got Mars in the 7th house in his solar return. So his enemies are strong, and of course Mars is in mutual reception to Saturn. So yeah, he has got he's got something to worry about. Now the Sun. So the Sun is obviously exactly where it was when he was born. By the way, I've set this solar return for London, not for Sandringham. I don't think I need to set it for Sandringham, but I take the view. He was born in London, and so London is where his fate is cast. I mean, I will relocate the chart to Sandringham in a moment just to see if there are any differences. But the Sun is interesting because in a solar return, it's always a good idea to look at what the Sun is doing. What midpoints, for example, is the Sun on in a solar return? So if we look at the midpoints for his Sun at the time of his solar return, and I think there is something interesting here, which I wanted to show you. So here is the pointer to his Sun, to his solar return. There it is. There is his Sun, and what we see is it is right opposition the Hades and Kronos. So Hades and Kronos are, I think they are in the sort of middle of Cancer. So that means his Sun is, at the time of his solar return, the Sun is sesquiquadrate Hades and Kronos. So that says something about his solar return. So what is Hades and Kronos about? Well, Hades is a planet of things which are underhand, disgusting, sordid, criminal, and Kronos is the planet of authority. It's, for example, judges, the law, and being arrested. And so Sun on a Hades Kronos, as far as I can see, could well describe an arrest. And of course, his year is just beginning. And so I think that is a really sort of major theme in terms of, what's going on for him, at the moment. And looking at what Alfred Witte says about Sun on the Hades Kronos midpoint, so he says, so the Hades Kronos midpoint in general, he says, Hades Kronos, the broad principle of Hades Kronos is great baseness and meanness. This is, by the way, Alfred Witte in his Rules for Planetary Pictures, the Astrology of Tomorrow. You can buy it. It's certainly available. Of course, it would help if one could read it in German, which I can't, but the English translation is available. Anyway, Hades Kronos, great baseness and meanness, poverty or want, poor government, plain clothes police. I think there were plainclothes police cars that visited him in Sandringham, but to arrest him. The basic formula for a criminal on a big scale. There's the crime and justice element of Hades Kronos, and with the Sun on the Hades Kronos midpoint. This is what it is. This is I think pretty good. Days of ill fortune, a run of bad luck. The man who is subjected to great baseness, who has to defend himself against a vile action. The government does not keep its promise to him. Much ill fate or death by grave events. Of course, Andrew would thoroughly agree with this. He would regard himself as being the victim of the vileness of government action. I think that we perhaps have to switch this round. I mean, of course, this book was sort of written and inspired by, the aftermath of the First World War and the rise of Nazism. And so if you're talking about arrests and plainclothes arrests, maybe the person writing this was sort of influenced by the Gestapo. I mean, don't forget, Witte was harassed by the Nazis and he committed suicide because he couldn't make a living anymore. I think in the sort of early 40s when there was, when astrologers just were not allowed to practice anymore. But I think we have to, we're talking about baseness, vile action. In this case, it's more likely to be Andrew's vile action, but, innocent until proven guilty and all that. So I think that Alfred Witte, in, describing that Hades Kronos midpoint has, really done a good job. And so it's pretty exact, this Sun on the Hades Kronos midpoint. I think that it really does work. So this is not something to be underestimated. And of course, the Sun is also on the Venus-Mars midpoint. I think, there's Venus-Mars. So when you put together Venus-Mars and Hades Kronos, there is the danger of being arrested not just for misconduct in public office, but potentially for sexual offences. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Venus-Mars is about sexuality. So I think you can see that this particular solar return, might be a bit of a problem. So that's the solar return set for London. Now he was in Sandringham, I believe, on Thursday, just before because he had his solar hold on, he had his solar return. Let's get this right. 16th. He had his solar return on the 18th. He was arrested on the 19th. So if we relocate this chart to Sandringham, there will be a small difference. Let's just see what kind of difference we've got. So if we relocate the chart, the ascendant just it moves on a bit. It moves on to 17 Leo. So Mars just becomes a little bit closer to the descendant. Also the ascendant moves a little bit closer to his Uranus. So I mean, there's not a huge amount of difference, and probably in this case, I would say that his Sandringham, his solar return set for Sandringham seems to be stronger and perhaps more difficult than his solar return set for London. But it's quite marginal. Now he is having it's his 66th birthday. So 66th birthday. So we can look at a converse solar return. So he was born in 1960. So his converse solar return took place 66 years before he was born, 1894. So we can set a solar return for his 66 years before he was born. Now that might sound like a weird thing to do, but this is astrology. Time does weird stuff. Time goes forward and it goes backwards. And very often I found that converse solar returns can work better than direct solar returns. So here is his solar return set for London for February the 18th, 1894, 66 years before he was born. And, we see that he has got firstly, we've got Leo rising again. So this Leo rising is a signature that keeps showing up. Andrew has got Leo rising in his own chart. He's got Leo rising in his direct solar return. He's got Leo rising in his converse solar return. And in fact, in the converse solar return, it's picking up on his ascendant much closer, because Andrew has, I think, is 11 Leo rising. So it's pretty close to his own rising degree. And the moon is rising as well. And Saturn is pretty close to the descendant. So having that moon-Saturn feel, having moon rising and Saturn on the IC. Did I say descendant? So he's got Saturn on the IC and moon on the ascendant. I mean, in the jargon, that's like having a mundane moon Saturn square, because the moon and Saturn are three signs apart. So I think that is quite a telling horoscope. So that's his solar return, his two solar returns. And then finally, I just wanted to look at his solar arc directions. So he is 66 years old. So we move everything 66 degrees. And so if we direct his chart to 66 days after he was born, I mean, that takes us to April the 25th, 1960. So here is his directed chart. And so what we're looking for is aspects between the directed chart and his natal chart. And what really struck me was Neptune. So he was born with his Neptune at 9 degrees Scorpio. So if we move his Neptune, well, in fact, his Neptune at 9 degrees Scorpio and his Pluto at 5 degrees Virgo. So if we move his Pluto, if we move his Neptune around approximately, it's approximate because it's a solar arc direction. It's not going to be exact. So if we move his Neptune by around 66 degrees, it moves forward to 14 degrees 32 Capricorn. So Neptune moves onto his Saturn, and it's kind of interesting that there's a Saturn-Neptune feel to this. His solar arc directed Neptune on his Saturn at a time when there is a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So it feels as if he's kind of picking up on the Saturn-Neptune energy. So if he's got solar arc directed on his Neptune on his Saturn, when is this going to manifest? Well, probably going to manifest when there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And additionally, if you move his Pluto 66 degrees, it comes up to his Neptune. Now, a lot of these are generational because we're dealing with outer planets, and anyone roughly of Andrew's age will have these same transits in people who are born in the spring of 1960. But he's Andrew. And if you're Andrew, if you're completely connected to the collective, you're the king's brother, then you're going to be picking up on these collective energies, far more than if you're just an ordinary person. I mean, it sounds unfair, but do we want to have to deal with all this collective stuff? I mean, that's the advantage of being a private individual. I mean, I know that Andrew is a private individual in theory. Now he's lost all his titles, but he's still at the center of things, and so he's very much a prey to to the outer planets. And I think that you could argue that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction really is really causing him a lot of damage. And I don't think that these solar returns, those two solar returns, they're not really helping much. I think that both of them are difficult charts. So anyway, that's Prince Andrew. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.